We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello, thank you for being with us as we talk about natural resources around the globe. And we're using this theme of natural resources in a wanting world because we know that there's many people, almost 2 billion people a day, that do not have access to natural resources of all kinds. And we're talking about power, we're talking about public policy and healthcare and education, all the other things that we need to be concerned about as far as developing humankind. So as we go into the 21st century, it's not the fact that we're in a wanting world, but we have adequate resources to address the needs as we continue to expand the population as we go from almost 7 billion up to maybe 9 billion people by 2050. We have 3 experts that have been talking with us, and they're going to share some more of their ideas. We have Larry Silverman, who is the youngest amongst us. It's, even though he's the youngest, he's 40 years experience as an environmental attorney and also a professor at Johns Hopkins University in environmental law and policy. We have in the middle over here Randy Pheobus, who is CEO and president of Native Grasslands Conservancy. And then we have Robert A., or Bob Freling, as he likes to be called, Executive Director of the Solar Electric Light Fund. And all of these 3 gentlemen have been involved throughout their professional careers to look at the globe, natural resources, how we're going to protect them, and how we're going to provide more. And so, Larry, tell us a little bit about your early work and how you've been bringing about the legal environment so that both Bob and Randy could operate here in the 21st century.
In a way, it was easier because some of the problems you saw were so obvious.
And this goes back to the 1970s and the early 80s, correct?
Were catching on fire, and there was big oil spills, and all kinds of terrible things were happening. It was really obvious. And the other thing about it was, when you have these terrible, obvious problems, you actually can make tremendous progress. You know, if you wanted to warm your house, heat your house efficiently, first thing you do is shut the door. Nothing you do after that will be quite as cost effective and do as much a benefit as that. When I first started, it was a question of closing the doors and sealing the windows. It's getting a little tougher now.
Well, we're getting down to the area where we need to actually be looking at what are the next steps, the more sophisticated steps. And this is something that Bob Freling has been talking about as far as his work in the Solar Electric Light Fund. And what do we need to be doing as we're looking at the Conservancy, which is what Randy is concerned with, and how that we can use the renewable and natural resources that we have much better as we're moving through the 21st century.
Well, clearly conservation of energy is a huge first step. I mean, we've made a lot of progress, but so much more that we can do to use more efficient lighting, to use our more efficient cars, to weatherize our homes. I mean, many things that can be done today to just make the energy that we do have go a lot further. But ultimately, what we have to think about is transitioning away from fossil fuels to an energy economy that is based on clean, renewable, and carbon-free sources of energy. Solar, wind, geothermal. That's our future.
Now, Randy Pheobus has been working on the preservation of grasslands, of course, the interplay of that with forestry and other areas. Larry's been looking at the broad spectrum as far as air, land, and water. So if we're using renewable and alternative energy, how is that going to directly address the needs of these 2 billion people a day that go to bed wanting food, water, heat, light, and clothing?
Well, many of these 2 billion people are located in very remote villages that are difficult to reach with a conventional power line. So distributed energy sources like the sun, which is the ultimate source of distributed power, right? You don't need a transmission line. The sun from the energy is its own distribution. And the beautiful thing about solar is wherever you are, in a remote village in the rainforest or in the remote village in the Himalayas, if the sun shines, you can convert those photons of light into clean, renewable energy and use that power for lighting, for pumping water, for powering schools and health clinics. So for the 2 billion people that are dispersed, it is the perfect solution.
And also, too, as we move in, Randy Pheobus is working on the conservation of grasslands and forests and other natural resources. And Randy, what do you see as far as the interplay among all these different resources that you're looking at? But also, we're adding into that the fauna, the various insects, the animals, and others that are interplay there. How does that relate to everything that we're talking about right now?
Well, from understanding the relationships between the components of our ecosystem, the species that actually compose our ecosystem, most scientists have come to the realization that it all works together to benefit the entire planet. I mean, really, everything is contributing to even the wealth of the system, the ecosystem, but also to the health and welfare of the human community. And it is a marvelous system that is very resilient and works very well. And we really need to understand what it needs and try to provide as much as we can to allow its function so that all of us benefit.
Well, how do you see, Randy, Bob Freling and what he's doing as far as solar and other alternative sources of power? How does that directly relate to the flora and fauna that you're trying to protect?
Well, that's a good question. We don't have to go halfway around the globe to use solar. I actually am using solar, so it's kind of great to see the applications in distant lands. But we actually use solar for its wonderful synergy between small motors like fans for greenhouses and for water pumping. Usually you're needing water when the sun's shining, and so the panels are ready to go, and all a water pump needs is basically what the output of a small array. So we are actually applying those to the propagation of native species for the restoration projects, and for remote areas where we don't have access to either pumping or electricity. So it's a great. I just love the concept of power coming from the sky and energizing what mechanical things I have in front of me. It's incredible.
Well, Larry Silverman, this is something you've been working on for the last 40 years, is to move us in the direction of using these alternative sources. What types of changes have you seen? Now, these gentlemen are looking at it from the best practices of technologies,
Right.
processes, and products, but you're looking at it from public policy and also law. How do you see that juxtaposition and that interplay between law and policy and allowing the best practices to work?
Well, when I first started, the most important tool you had was a big stick to beat people around the head and shoulders and to embarrass them and to call them out and so on, and to get them to want to do the right thing, which they didn't always want to do. That's changed. That's really changed a lot. It doesn't mean the problem is solved. Most people I deal with, whether in corporations or cities or in politics, they want to do the right thing, and they have some idea of where that is. And not always, but usually they do. But they still haven't quite figured out how to manage that. That it becomes a management task. It becomes it's hard for people in the places where Bob is working. It's hard for people sort of think, well, what we have to do is replicate or duplicate whatever they did in the West. So if they had big telephone lines, we should have big telephone lines. Well, you know what? Bob's proving that's not necessary.
Yeah,
it's not even a good idea.
And
it's
we
a bad
need to throw
idea.
in here, we've been talking about his B countries,
Yeah.
Brazil, Benin, and Bhutan, and
Yeah.
a number of other places, very small. And also, too, is that you've re-energized your practice and your work, because you're now working in a very small, isolated country, Nepal. And so how do you see the policy and the law development in the United States and Western societies now being applied in places like Nepal and these other countries where Bob has been working?
Well, I think we need to give these people more support. The kids that I work with, the students, they're the front line.
Now, when you say kids, these are really universities.
University students, college kids, they're in their
Right.
20s, they're kids to me. They're younger than my children.
Okay.
And they're the front line. You know, if the forestry students in Nepal are not given a chance to do what they dearly want to do and preserve their forests and their species, the whole world will suffer.
Yeah, let's bring up a couple of these slides if we can. We have one of these fantastic waterfalls that we were looking at earlier, and let's look at that as it relates here. And then I'm going to have Bob comment on that as well. We're looking at the runoff here from the glaciers. And of course, in order to allow this runoff to happen, this goes to Randy's comment, is we have to protect all of this. Right. And so that's the policy and the law aspects. How does that relate into these places like Nepal, Bhutan, and other areas, Larry?
Well, these places have traditions of stewardship, which are being spoiled. Either where the Chinese run things in Tibet, they have no regard for their traditions, and where the Western aid establishment comes in, they sometimes think they know everything when they come in. So I think what's to me the most exciting thing is to see some of these, particularly the young people, going back to the land, really looking at it. You know, when I gave them assignments, one of the assignments I said, go to your village and tell me how the water system works.
And we have this photographed right here, Larry. If we can talk about what we're looking at here. This is the Kathmandu Forestry College. And then we're going to go right into Bob as far as how this could directly relate with his solar and alternative energy work. Tell us a little bit about these people and why this is important.
I love these kids. This is the most important forestry project in Nepal, in the Himalayas, in my opinion. These 40 or 50 kids. If they can't do what they need to do, if they can't have internet, if they can't have electricity, if they can't stay in their own country to make a living doing what they really want to do, we're toast. Forget about trying to do anything about the climate. There's not enough windmills to make up for the lost forests of Nepal. Just not enough. So I'm trying to figure out, how do we support these guys? You know,
Randy Pheobus, you got about 15 seconds. What's your challenge to the listening public around the globe?
Well, the projections for the next 2 decades are that from the current rate of loss of species is 20 to 30,000 a year, and the projections are by scientists in the next 2 decades is 200 to 300,000 species a year that we are expected to lose. So the time to act is now.
Thank you to our listening and viewing public around the globe for being with us as we talk about natural resources, the protection, the development, and as we work towards developing the Emerald Planet for you and all of humankind. Thank you.